Yeah.
There it went. Hi, I'm Patrick
Yep.
McCray, and
I'm Alan Gallant.
we are here to continue our talk about the Twilight Zone. In this case, not an individual episode, but I have 4 or 5 episodes.
Yeah, I think
Uh,
that actually one, two, three, four, five, six.
6 episodes that are all unified by a theme. Twilight Zone is a show, as Alan and I were talking about the other night, that is very much driven by micro themes. There are happy episodes. There are funny episodes. There are ironic episodes. Episodes that deal with the elderly. Episodes that deal with life and death. Certainly, a lot of those.
Yes.
And in this case, um, uh, wanted to talk about Twilight Zone and how it handled events going right up to and then right after the end of the world. And so, thanks to the probable cause of the end of the world, AI, we had
They
non-randomly
didn't think so
picked.
back then, though. They thought it was just going to be the bomb most of the
That's
time.
right.
Yeah,
We
bomb
have six
or
episodes.
another theme was invasion from another planet,
Yes,
various things like that, and also the creeping of fascism from the Red Scare era as well would be the end of a world at least.
now at least 3 of these episodes came from 1961, early 1962, and that's the third season, so it's about the middle of the series. It really anchors us. And what a grim season
Hmm.
these came from. It would be interesting to go back and look at this third season and find the sunnier episodes to really get an idea of how Serling was balancing
It's true.
the
They
the picture.
in real time, in real life, they had a lot of inspiration for the grimness, as this was the era of the missiles of October, which happened towards the tail end of this era, but it was building at that point. We had the cruise ship, we will
Who will
destroy
bury you?
you, and all that sort of thing
Yeah.
happening. That had already happened. The checkers, not the checkers speech, but
The
the
debate.
Nixon thing over the stove or whatever it was there
Yeah.
had happened already. By this time, also Kennedy had made several speeches about the Iron Curtain, so to speak, and we were. I think Gary Powers had happened by this time
That
as
was
well.
the plane.
Yes, that was the spy plane
Yeah.
down. Um, and so there was a lot. There was a lot for Serling to digest, and I believe all of these that we're talking about from these various. We've got a couple from the. Yeah, we've got several from the
From the
third.
first.
We've got a couple from the first, and one from the second season. So they're all 59 to 61 into 62, I guess, is what we're dealing with here.
Hell of
Uh,
a time. I
yeah,
wonder. There's one thing I could look up, but I because I'm too lazy. I wonder if the show was an immediate hit or if it had to build an audience.
I don't know. I mean, Serling was certainly a winner in terms of the product he was producing. He'd already produced several teleplays and various other things that were, right up there on par with Chayefsky and some of the others that were producing really high quality work at that
You
time.
want about a boxer?
Yeah, he did, as a matter of fact. Trying to remember what it's called now, but it was made into a film as well. Um, and I can't remember the name of it. Let's see if I can figure it out here. Um, I bet if I put in the word boxing and Serling, I'll probably get it fairly quickly. It was a teleplay first. Um, Serling was a boxer in World War II.
Really? It
He
had to be
fought
like
17 fights during his training, paratrooper training.
what they call that, welterweight. What's the lightest weight they
Yeah,
can?
probably he might have even been a flyweight. I mean, he wasn't a very big man. Uh,
Yeah.
he was pretty small. But
No, he's very little. He was,
uh,
I think 5'5" or something.
the teleplay was called Requiem for a Heavyweight, and became a film. Palance was in the teleplay, and Anthony Quinn, I believe, played the boxer in the film.
Okay.
So yeah, it was
Was it
incredibly well thought of.
was it longer as it's on in cinema?
I think that's tough to say. It was on the U.S. Steel Hour, so it was probably 90 minutes. So it's probably about the same.
Okay, yeah, so that's feature length.
Yeah.
That's so it was not a case of a boxer brief.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't a first round knockout either.
Well, let's leave these in production order.
Sure.
What was the first season?
Well, the first one, I believe, was season 1, episode 8, Time Enough at Last. Burgess Meredith as the librarian, the first of 2 librarian roles that he plays.
Yes.
On Twilight Zone.
And we would see the other one here.
We will see that a little bit later.
Ironically, with Fritz Weaver, who shows up in another episode, but without Burgess Meredith.
Right. That's
so
correct.
Serling had finally beaten the judge's order, and they were allowed to legally separate, and that was good. They were no longer ordered to appear together.
Well, I thought it was actually a restraining order that caused the separation, but that's okay.
The comedy team of Weaver and Meredith finally broken up.
Yes.
Which the funny part was that Meredith was the straight man in that partnership.
Yes.
But Fritz Weaver's so unmistakable. And when he opens his mouth, especially, I remember the second of these I watched was the Third from the Sun, about the rocket. Yeah.
Oh yes.
And I, at the very beginning, I said, "Is that Fritz Weaver?" And he opened his mouth and said 2 words, and I was like, "Yeah, that's Fritz Weaver."
Yeah, he has the sound of his voice has that sort of background hum of an organ, baritone tones of an organ. He's just very, very resonant kind of.
And you can still hear it almost echoing after he stopped.
Yes.
I remember when I was a kid in classrooms, occasionally a parent would walk in and want to talk to the teacher about the photos he'd been showing us. And but a parent would come in, and they always seemed to have that voice.
Yeah.
That amazing adult stentorian voice that you could hear so unmistakably across the room.
Yes, and I think adults typically try to talk that way around children too. They want them to do things, so that I mean, we all have roles to play, and the parent role, I think, is a very specific role, obviously, and sometimes you jack up the impact of the voice.
With Hitchcock, he wouldn't do that with kids.
No,
it was what he said. Yes. Bill Mumy told a great story when he was working on Alfred Hitchcock Presents, which was around the time of his earliest Twilight Zone. So he was like 5, 6, or he was a little kid, and he was really fidgety. And they were trying to set the lighting for a shot, and Hitchcock, for whatever reason, was on the set that day. And he came over to Bill, and he said, "My boy, if you don't stop moving around, I'm going to take a hammer and a long nail, and I'm going to nail your foot to the floor, and the blood will flow from it like milk." Mumy did not move.
Oh no,
another inch.
No, yeah, we've all heard the stories of how Hitchcock got his way. Yes, and that's of course that is appropriately diabolical, and certainly shores up his reputation.
So tempting. It's so tempting. You don't do it, but oh boy.
Yes.
That moment always rings in my ears.
Yeah.
And fortunately, Mumy was hip enough to not be permanently traumatized.
No,
by that.
He had an actor sensibility early on.
He really did. That guy is well worth a close examination.
He's never really stopped working either. I mean, he goes below the radar a lot, but he's never really stopped working.
Well, Fish Heads was him.
Yeah.
He did the song Fish Heads.
Yeah.
And of course, he came back and thanks to Joe Straczynski, was on Babylon 5 for 4 or 5 years.
Yes, he was.
And was very good and played a character with an end that we're not expecting, because he goes bad.
Right.
In a weird way. And that was one of Joe's best twists on that show, because he goes bad over love. And wow, you don't see that coming.
Have you seen, speaking of that, have you seen the new Lost in Space series at all?
Yeah.
Did you I mean, Bill was in that in the
Yeah.
first episode because he plays the real Dr. Smith, who dies in the first episode.
Yeah, I mean that was sad. I would have cast Bill as Dr. Smith. It would have been great.
Seriously, had somebody
But
else. Yeah.
I have to say, I don't really like that show a lot because it was the show that Irwin Allen intended.
More
You
serious.
know,
Yeah.
back before he realized inadvertently that he'd become producer of the funniest sitcom
Right.
on TV, which I celebrate. I really
Well,
love
I
the
do too.
relationship.
It was for kids. The
Yeah,
same thing happened to Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea. I watch those episodes now and I just laugh out loud because they're so much fun. They're
yeah,
ridiculous, but they're so much fun. But especially Lost in Space because it was done with wit.
his wife's.
A great deal of wit.
And I think Jonathan Harris is who made that possible.
Oh
You know,
yeah.
Jonathan Harris and Dick Tufeld as the voice of the robot
Yes.
were just, and Tufeld wasn't on the set, and so the fact that they were able to still recreate in their minds what Tufeld
Attitude.
was going to
Yeah.
sound like
Yeah.
was so magical. Yeah, I that show we've talked about on episodes prior to you joining us at length. We talked a lot about it when Mark Goddard died,
Yeah.
and just what a magical show that is because A, it's very funny. B, it's incredibly touching because at the end of the day, although John makes the hard decisions, sort of, and
Sure.
sometimes, and cares about his kids, he's not exactly as absent as Reed Richards is as a terrible father, but that Will's real family are Dr. Smith and the robot,
Right.
and they genuinely they care about him, not because he's just genetic material that they're responsible for, but they care about him because they really like him,
Right.
and they
And
take time to get to know him.
I think that chemistry is part of what convinced Alan that this is the way to go. That it's
Sure.
that it was getting a spike, obviously, in the
Yeah.
ratings. But that was we're going to just let Jonathan Harris and Bill Mumy figure out what the best course of action is here, and then we'll add in the robot and the guest alien of the week, and we'll have a good time.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
But that's an element of the show that if I were executive producing it would be front and center.
yeah, sure.
And but I really liked the young woman who plays Penny on the new Lost in Space. I think she's really extraordinary. I hope she has a future. But the star of that show, without a doubt, was the part I had the most doubts about at Parker Posey.
Yes, she was great.
As Dr. Smith. She's just fantastic.
She is.
Yeah.
So she's so she has such a duality.
Yes.
She has impulses that go both ways, to the darkest of the dark and into the light, both.
Yeah.
And she can't figure out, Posey figured out the source of the damage for this character, and she ingrained it.
Yeah.
And made it make sense in a way that emotionally and energetically it makes total sense, even if you don't know why is she doing that. You still see the truth in it from what she's doing.
Very much so. Yeah, she's just marvelous. So Time Enough at Last is. I have a tough time with this episode. This is one of the first Twilight Zone episodes I saw because on one hand it feels very cruel. And it's an incredibly cruel episode.
It's about broken relationships or the lack of relationships.
Yes.
Rather than what we just talked about.
And he encourages. The thing is, he does encourage the lack of relationship.
He does. He's completely obsessed with books.
And so that's where I feel like we can feel okay about his fate.
The irony of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It doesn't seem particularly cruel. I mean, it is to the character, obviously. But it seems to make some kind of karmic sense.
How would this episode have been if the wife had gotten just one sympathetic moment?
You wouldn't have you wouldn't have cared to follow the librarian as far as you did.
Okay, fair enough.
No. I mean,
Fair enough.
even though we realize that, yeah, he's the captain of his own troubles, so to speak. He's the driver of the whole thing. Because it's Burgess Meredith and because of the way he can play the human condition, you still have an interest in what happens to him. You still have an interest. You still want to watch him. He's fascinating. And if he comes across as a complete unfeeling villain to the wife who is long suffering, and she's the one that gets vaporized
Yeah.
about him.
It's interesting how these dynamics work. I mean, it's such delicate chemistry
Mm-hmm.
of what to add and what not to add. This had a couple of really good storytelling moments. It had one of the only mid-episode narrations by Rod Serling.
Yes.
And he does it just to save time and budget, but it's a brilliant, brilliant moment.
It is. He's a great writer. I mean,
He's great, right? He's a great narrator.
Does not waste anything.
He doesn't. And there's a moment early on where he's looking at something and it's fuzzy, and he brings up, and you see it from the point of view, he brings up the glasses.
Mm-hmm.
And that's such a subtle way to let us know exactly how important these glasses are.
That's right. He's totally dependent on them. He's almost blind without them. Yeah.
And to think that this was an episode that Serling assumed, and everyone assumed would be seen only once.
Sure.
By most people. That is such a great move. If you've never seen it before, to be programmed very subtly.
Yeah,
very subtly.
that's almost subconscious foreshadowing.
Yeah.
It's semi-conscious at the best. You don't, the first time you see it, you're not going to say aha. You're just going to take it in. The brain's going to take it, and then you're going to say aha at the end of the episode. So yeah, it's a great morality piece set in a Holocaust, in a nuclear Holocaust, where the Holocaust is secondary.
It's secondary
to the human play. Which is
ultimately
brilliant.
what you have to do. I mean, there's only so many burned buildings you can see without just collapsing into tears. It's almost the equivalent of Stanley Kubrick treating nuclear war as a comedy.
Right.
So that you could start, again, examining the human dimensions, which are the only ones that are going to matter.
Right. So the nuclear holocaust becomes the given circumstance for the last third of the episode, basically.
Yeah. Yeah. What's the next episode we have? Do we jump to season 3 or season 2?
We've actually got 3 from season 1. The one that is listed as season 3, Third from the Sun, is actually season 1.
It is season 1, yeah.
So Third from the Sun, which is again, this is Fritz Weaver again, and the character actor that we mentioned before, that I need to go back and find.
Anderson.
Yes, Edward. Yeah. Third from the Sun, Edward Andrews, who most people of our generation will recognize from a 1,000 sitcoms in the 1960s and 70s.
Fussy but ultimately ineffectual.
Yes.
Figure in these.
Sometimes plays an executive that gets hoodwinked, or those kind of roles. A bespectacled guy with gray hair, fairly tall, but nonplussed a lot of times.
Yes.
And he's
what
in.
What did you make of this episode? Because I was a bit distracted. This is the one that I was a bit distracted during.
Right. Well, this one again, the sub theme of irony in this. In the final analysis, there's irony in it, but what you're dealing with is sort of a shell game of circumstances here that Serling is putting you through. These scientists are trying to figure out a way to escape because they know that the planet's going to be blown smithereens, and these 2 guys, Fritz Weaver being one of them, and Joe Maros, I think is the actor plays Jerry, is the other one. and they've been plotting to try to get this experimental craft, which they know is likely can accomplish interstellar travel. So but of course nobody's supposed to mess with this stuff, so that has to be deep dark secret. And Carling, the Edward Andrews character, finds out about it and attempts to blackmail them, and he wants to go because he knows that this is going to happen. And so you get this intrigue, this survival intrigue, although it doesn't reach the level of another episode that we're going to talk about tonight, which is The Shelter.
Well, is that the next one?
No, it's
Okay.
That's season 3.
The Shelter really affected me very deeply.
It is absolutely a gut punch, and it also has some great performances in it.
Let's jump to that.
You want to do that?
On the stove.
Okay, so for those that don't know, Third from the Sun is basically it's a misdirection, because you find out at the end of the episode that these people are not Earthlings, that they're heading towards Earth. Yeah. They're surviving their own nuclear holocaust, or whatever, gamma holocaust, whatever it is. They never say it's a nuclear bomb, but it's going to destroy whatever it is, some weapon. And so they end up escaping with their wives and kids. And at the very end of the episode, it's the twist. The irony is, that planet over there, what's it called? Well, it's called Earth, and it's
a way for Serling to have it both ways.
Yeah.
He's able to do his end of the world business, but then turn around and have it be simply cautionary.
And right, another world. Yeah, absolutely, another world.
I think
just a little piece of trivia for Third from the Sun before we move on. Denise Alexander, who became famous as a soap opera star in the 70s, 80s, and into the 90s, General Hospital and several other, plays a teenage girl in this episode, Fritz Weaver's character's daughter. Yeah. And she's about 21 at that time. So she's now, I think she's recently celebrated like her 84th or 85th birthday. So that's how long ago these episodes.
Good for her, folks. She looks much younger in the episode.
She's very young looking in the episode. Yeah, and I think they just put very, very plain makeup on her. They didn't, rouge her or anything like that, and made her look like a 15-year-old, 16-year-old. Yeah. So yeah. So you want to go to The Shelter?
Well, I was just going to throw one hypothetical out there, and that is, another way to deal with the irony in this is if, they get out into space and there's some problem with the ship, and they run into a ship from the other side.
Yeah.
That has the solution to the problem, and they have to decide, as elevated scientists, can they get over their prejudices and fears,
right,
and dock with the other ship,
right,
and they do, and the people on the other ship have to kill them immediately.
Yeah.
Even though the stakes are so small,
right,
that unfortunately, most people will bring this stuff out with them.
But unfortunately, before they end up killing the other group, they learn from them that their planet has also been blown up.
Well, they're the other side of the war.
That's right.
So they're both on the same. Yeah, they're both on the same side.
Right.
Or from different sides of the same planet.
I see what you're saying, and then they both developed aircraft, spacecraft.
Sure.
Yeah, I got
you.
Okay.
Because it would be too easy an ending, too nice an ending.
Right.
If the scientists had been nice.
Mm-hmm.
And of course one of the guys on the ship would have been doing arguments for, no, they're elevated, they're smart, they're going to be like us. They're not going to, and it's like, no, they're just bringing it with them.
Yeah.
They're just bringing it with them. So what's next?
So you wanted to jump to season 3, episode 3, which is The Shelter.
The Shelter. Oh my God.
Which stars Larry Gates, who plays the Southern gentleman that gets slapped in the heat of the night, and we also have Jack Albertson, who is also in this episode.
I recognize only by his voice.
Because he
I
doesn't
was
look
not
like
used
the
to
old
seeing him
guy with the big mustache. Yeah.
this young, or he was older when I would see him in things. He was doing his work with the Mitchell brothers. He was older, and I think had lost some weight
Uh-huh.
and had the mustache.
Yes. Yeah.
And but I was convinced from the voice that's got to be Jack Albertson, and it
Yeah.
was.
And Albertson, yeah, of course, a lot of our audience will know him from Willy Wonka, because he plays grandfather in Willy Wonka, which would have been done like 8 or 9 years after this particular episode.
Yeah,
After this
and
particular.
really, he looked very different by then.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And he was, yeah, he'd lost more hair. He looked like he'd even gotten thinner at that point, and was
It was
great.
past his years playing Tarzan on television. Can you imagine Jack Albertson Tarzan?
As Tarzan. Tonight's episode, the bamboo wheelchair.
Yeah, exactly. Oh God. All right.
Shelter is a
The
harrowing episode.
Shelter, about these. It's one of his caustic looks at suburbia.
Mm-hmm.
Boy, he was mistrustful of suburbia.
Yes, we have several mistrustful of suburbia episodes.
Yeah, this is Monsters Do on Maple Street.
Yes.
Which maybe we should do next, because
Yeah.
they're so connected.
Yep, we can do that. Absolutely.
And the degree to which the people degenerate so quickly is harrowingly realistic.
Mm-hmm. Because people, yeah, the survival instinct kicks in for most people. It becomes like a basement sale at Filene's. Everybody just dives into the bin.
Yeah, yeah, and how ethnic it gets.
Yes,
and its ugliness.
Racist and bigotry and whatever excuse they can use to push somebody aside.
It all comes
Survival.
comes down to that.
Yeah.
The and then how glad handing everyone is to try and make up for it right after.
Yeah, which is the tour de force scene for Larry Gates when he walks out of there and walks up those steps and turns around and answers signals saying, this, don't know.
We're not coming back from
what's
this.
going to happen here. Fuck your block party. Basically, he's saying there's a lot more to think about now for all of us. And he included himself too as a character. He includes himself in this sort of unblinking eye that needs to basically critique the behaviors that each and every one of them has had and has submitted themselves to.
The only civilized ending that story possibly could have had is if he asks the protagonist to help them build a neighborhood shelter.
Yeah, that's, but I don't think, I think I would not be surprised if Serling thought of that and said no.
Yeah.
I want people to be uncomfortable with this.
Wow. I mean, I had some experiences today that weren't great, and it really, really made me step back and think long and hard about that. And it led to a very deep but positive conversation I had with someone. And I would like to think that's the sort of reaction that would have had Sterling doing backflips.
Yeah.
That a good piece of art really has that power and ability,
Yes.
I mean, the first show I can think of after this that had that sort of effect on me frequently was Deep Space Nine. It was not afraid to go in the Sterling direction.
No, it wasn't. It was not afraid to go past the altruism into other stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. And just leave you. That's why it's so good to leave every story, I think, not with a laugh, but with a slight ambiguity.
It's like, yeah, or maybe a laugh sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah, the story just keeps going with you.
Right.
A lesson John Carpenter, I think, learned really well. very theatrically, but none of his films end with any kind of satisfying resolution. They all leave with a sense that this story is going to keep going.
Yeah.
So
There's still another fork in the road.
but now the twin of this is Monster to Do on Maple Street.
Yes.
Which is what if there is no shelter?
Mm-hmm.
And all they have is turning on each other.
Yeah.
And how simply it's done. Here the alien invasion is.
Yeah, it's another alien twist. Yeah, except it's the opposite direction. It's aliens instead of, oh, these are aliens going to Earth to escape. These are aliens coming to Earth in order to conquer.
Yeah,
and they're
they just
using
want to mess the queen up.
Yeah, they're using human psychology to do it.
And it's just a power outage.
Yeah.
It's a brief power outage.
Odd power outage where there's flickering going on and things that are freaking people out, but that's what it is.
This is Rod Serling sitting down with Day the Earth Stood Still and thinking, yeah, there's another side to this story.
Sure.
And let's talk about what else would happen.
Right.
Not people standing around impotently, but people flying into severe paranoia.
Yeah.
In some ways justified. Because it's also an alien manipulating the population, but into a more benevolent awareness than Day the Earth Stood Still.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's true. Yeah. With this, the interesting thing is these characters all start out, golly gee whiz, they're all neighbors. They're all like each other. There's no, you had Claude Akins, Jack,
they're all likable.
Burt Metcalf as an actor,
rather
than as the producer of MASH, which he later became. But they're all likable characters initially, and then sets in, and again,
Weston especially goes dark very well.
Oh God, doesn't he? He starts like flinging poo at all the walls because he's in a panic. It's like that. Panic is not an excuse. It is, however, a reason.
Yes, it is.
And this is where he goes. Akins keeps trying to say, wait a minute. He seems to be a moral center where he doesn't want, but even he gets caught up in it a couple times before he backs back off again. So,
interesting atypical casting there, because Akins is the Southerner, or at least someone who comes off as a Southerner. He played one so many times.
Oh yes, absolutely.
You would think would be the reactionary bad guy.
Yes, Sheriff Lobo.
Yeah, and the roly-poly fat man, used to being kind of misunderstood, would be the voice of Jack Weston with that lisp, would be sort of the voice of reason. Yeah, it's the other way around. Yeah. I thought that was a real masterstroke on Serling's part.
And the neighbor guy, I forget his name, but the one that they suspect first, he plays a beautiful, restrained, sort of almost alien affect, which as a viewer, you're looking at him, you're going, oh, is he or isn't he?
That contributes wonderfully to the paranoia.
Yeah. So in that one, it's grabbing the audience prejudices and trying to manipulate them. So
Monster Doing Maple Street, what follows this? Or what have we've covered 3 or 4?
We have now covered 4. Monsters Due on Maple Street was season 1, episode 22. Let's see. We have a real Doomsday one. We've gone through 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, we've gone through 4, so we have 2 more. A real Doomsday one, which is Midnight Sun.
Ooh.
Which is the 10th episode of season 3.
It really just lets you sit there. I think the real point of that episode for me is to bring us around to the invader, the guy who breaks in.
Yeah.
And just his revelations about who he actually is, and so much of this is about appearances versus reality, and in this case he reverses it.
He does, and it turns out the guy that breaks in doesn't want to hurt anybody. He's just mad with thirst, you know, and he apologizes his way. It's Tom Reese that plays the guy that breaks in. He was a long-term character and sometime leading man actor on television. But the real performance here, and the older lady is very good, but
she is good. I mean, all three actors are very strong in this.
For me, it's Lois Nettleton. She's just the best. She's
awfully good in this.
She's a great actress anyway. She had a great career, and she was wonderful as a stage actor as well. She had a good career that way.
This is a nice antidote also to The Shelter and to Monsters Due on Maple Street, because this has neighbors truly being kind to one another.
Yes.
Sticking together. And I love that about it. I really think that kind of maturity, and it's, I'm not going to go, wave my flag here or anything like that, but there's a part of me that feels like it's a shame that we could not see two men behaving that way, because, men are sort of stereotyped as being the alpha types who do not go for cooperation. They go for competition.
Right.
And so on. And
be fighting over the water bottle,
Yeah. And it's I think that's when you see men behaving cooperatively in these types of stories, why I think it's even more touching, because we expect women as being mutual nurturers.
Yes.
And when you see men in those roles, it really stands out.
It does.
That's not to say there's anything wrong with the episode. This is me thinking out loud. No.
Yeah.
Lois is very good in this, and she gets to play, or she chooses to play a lot of variety in a part that could very easily be one note.
It is true. It is true. I mean, at the beginning of the episode, everything's hot and bothered. Apparently, they really heated up the set, too, for this particular episode. They had people on the verge of passing out at various points.
Wow.
Yeah. And so the great thing about it is, of course, you have that environment. So that helps, and hinders both. I mean, obviously, ridiculous amount of heat. But they try so hard to be so normal, and the women are trying, to maintain some kind of calm. The older lady's talking about, well, I heard this on the radio, and this is happening, and yeah, it looks really bad, but da 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 da, and so they're trying to sort of just live minute to minute at the beginning of it, but as it gets worse, of course, things get more stressed out, and it comes to a head with a guy breaking in.
Yeah.
And then everybody sort of gets raw, even though she's very understanding when he breaks down and backs up. I'm not going to hurt you. She starts to I understand what you're talking about, and the fact that he's still.
That's very touching.
Their water is forgotten at that point, because they're human beings and they're all under the same amount of enormous pressure. But again, it's got the Serling twist at the end.
The freezing to death.
And she's having this nightmare, wishful thinking dream that turns into a nightmare.
And it is it's all a dream episode that really works. Yeah. It's hard to get those where it doesn't feel like a cop-out. And this really does not feel like a cop-out at all.
No. She had a fever that just broke, and so she woke up and came out of it.
In a situation just as bad.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
In 2 weeks, we're all going to be frozen.
Yeah. The line in that really gets me is the doctor saying, we're out of medicine.
Yeah.
That's all used up. What's the last one of these?
The last one we've got is a different a doomsday of a different feather. It's the obsolete man. It's a political doomsday. It's definitely hearkening to totalitarianism and fascism and 1984 and allegiance to the state, whereas the state has allegiance to no one but itself. And it's and he's brilliant.
This felt the freshest.
What's that?
this felt the freshest,
Yeah, it feels
given
like
what's going on
today's
right now.
headlines, doesn't it, in some ways? Um, but it's Fritz Weaver and then, of course, Burgess Meredith.
Yeah.
So this is at the point, I think, where the restraining order was lifted and two of these actors could finally be on the same screen. Uh, uh, so, but it's Fritz is great. I mean, he's totally committed as this factotum that's like, oh, I love the fact that I get to sentence people to death. You know,
There's a quietly um, extra ominous quality in this that they don't, I think, touch on. And if this is being broadcast live, why guards don't break in immediately and get Weaver out of there?
right, right.
And it could be they're as sick of him as anyone else.
Well, they tried to really, totally, but they also tried to explain it in the dialogue by saying, "You wanted to isolate me, and you got your wish. There's nobody to help you because all we have are the cameras." But of course, like I say, unless they were 3 miles away, they couldn't get there in time. You know, which doesn't make a lot of sense, but
It doesn't.
I,
They must have a lot of buildings too to have
yeah,
moved all of the neighbors out.
right, right. Yeah, and he's been living there for 20 years, according to the script too. So you have I guess it's a willing suspension of disbelief here in order to further the parable.
Or a
Yeah.
statement of just how much everyone's drunk the Kool-Aid.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, where everybody's just sort of somnambulant about what's going on.
This is the most Black Mirror of them,
Oh, yeah. I
of the
mean, because
episodes.
it's even in its own time, in our time, in its own time, we were talking about terror states like Russia, East Germany, some of the other satellite countries that were being literally ruled behind an iron curtain, um, or at least literally ruled that way behind a figurative iron curtain, I guess is the best way to put it. My partner, Lisa, actually worked and lived over in Europe when she worked for a Hard Rock Cafe in the 80s. And when the wall came down, she was in Berlin. And she got to go across.
Wow.
Everything was green and gray. Everything.
Yeah.
Building. Everything. She said, it was the weirdest feeling to be able to cross over into that world. Of course, more people are crossing over into the other world for a while. But yeah, she was there when they took the wall down. She saw all that happen. So,
looking at this and bringing up something needlessly political, did you see the report on the happiness index?
oh no,
Well,
I don't believe there is such a
that's
thing.
been
But
done since 2012,
yeah,
looking at the 24 most prominent by some measure nations on Earth,
sure.
and that for the first time the U.S. came in at 24.
Yeah, no, I'm not surprised. We are the
Finland number one.
Yes, we are among the most stressed out of any of the first world countries right now, for obvious reasons. But yeah, I don't know about a happiness index, but certainly maybe it should be called an anxiety index instead.
We're number one. We're number one.
Right. God.
But with that echoing in my ears, watching something like this again really, really sticks with me.
Sure. Absolutely.
What was the other Twilight Zonic theme we mentioned as being a good jumping off point for next time? We mentioned at the start of the episode.
Well, there was so this would be more about doomsday and mortality anxiety, I guess, as a sub theme for a lot of these. But we talked about some of the more comedic episodes. We mentioned that as a general theme.
Is the idea of hope and new beginnings something that the Twilight Zone did?
Yes, it did it. The first thing that comes to mind is the Christmas episode
Night of the Meek.
Yeah, Night of the Meek.
Yeah, Night of the Meek. What You Need. One for the Angels.
Mm-hmm.
Um, uh, the one with Ed Wynn's kid, Keenan.
Keenan.
Keenan Wynn is the author who dictates everything, and it comes into existence, and you realize his shrewish wife is who insists that he burn tapes or something like that
Mm,
is one of the problems
yes.
that gets eliminated, and he's understandably okay with that.
Yes.
That
Yes.
might be a good sequence to look at.
Yeah.
I think next is just kind of an antidote to this. And
Yes.
Roger Ebert said that no great story was ever, or no great movie was ever truly depressing, and every bad one was.
Yeah.
And
Regardless of what it was attempting to do. Yeah.
that's right. That's
Yeah.
right. And you look at something like Schindler's List. It's a lot of things, but it's not depressing.
No.
It can be harrowing.
It's terrifying. It's yeah, it's a lot of things, but not depressing. You're right. I mean, the idea of it I can understand.
It has depressing elements
yes.
to tell the story, but since that's kind of our baseline for
Mm-hmm.
the most serious movie ever made.
Yeah.
Right there was Showa. Was it's odd to say it's a favorite movie of mine, but it is.
Right.
Just because of the experience it takes you on. But that New Beginnings might be a good
Yeah.
one to do.
Yeah.
Okay, well let's sign off and talk about when we might want to do that.
Cool.
All right. Thank you for coming to the Twilight Zone with us. It remains one of the richest, best written, economical, brave, mean-spirited, light-hearted, life-embracing, life-denying series I ever made.
Yeah, it's incredibly diverse for what it initially was perceived as being, which was probably a science fiction kind
Monster of
of
the Week.
series, fantasy.
Yeah, Outer Limits.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. All right. Well, very good. Well, thank you for joining us. I'm Patrick McCray.
I'm Alan Gallant.
Good night.